All right, everyone. We are back for another fantastic episode of the Blue Crocus Experience. I'm really, really excited for this one. Dustin is a guy that I've gotten to know and become good friends with over the last little bit. Excited to have Dustin on board here. We're gonna have some really interesting topics. It's gonna tend away from kind of the business side of things to more of life. You know, we're all as business owners, as humans, we go through a lot. We all have a story, and I think there's a lot that people can resonate with in Dustin's story. So, Dustin, really appreciate you having you on the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me on. Yeah, like I got to thinking the other day, I was in Ocean Springs, Mississippi when me and you started messaging each other off of a whim. And that was like, I don't know, a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, month and a half ago. And yeah, like I feel like we've had 10 conversations since then, and my life's changed incredibly since then. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited, man. Yeah. So Dustin and I actually we're twinsies today. I'll just get up here. We're twinsies for our
Yeah.
shirt here for everybody who's watching online, and if you're listening on the podcast, we're both wearing Dustin's Vikings and Vixen shirts. And I guess Dustin, just start off with giving us a background of what Vikings and Vixens is. You know, kind of what you guys are doing, because a lot of people, you know, if they haven't followed you, they may not know what you guys are up to. And for anybody who's watching live as we have this, we have it on a couple places on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you guys have questions or comments, you know, that you want to ask Dustin, fire away. I can pull them up here on the screen and we'll make it happen. But Dustin, dive into a little bit of where you guys are now and what you're doing, and then we'll peel back and look at some of the backstory and whatnot there.
Yeah, so currently right now, well, first off, Vikings and Vixens is a fitness group that my wife and I run. And so obviously I'm the Viking and she's the Vixen. And I actually come from kind of the Nordic background. That's from Scandinavia. That's kind of my background as far as way back. And so, she's tall and long leg, and it was a cool play on names. But ultimately it's a fitness group that we run and fitness community. We do some online one-on-one coaching and stuff like that. But currently, we are actually on tour, living in a school bus that I converted myself. And we are doing a bunch of workouts in parks, and then doing nutrition seminars, and kind of bringing health back to the forefront. So we picked 10 different cities, and all across the lower half of the United States. And we're literally, trying to bring the actual health to the forefront, as opposed to sort of what we've all been dealing with here in the last couple of years. We just wanted to bring, actually health, and controlling what you eat, understanding that we need to drink water, and exercising, and getting some sun, and being outside, and moving, and enjoying life. And so we were gonna move back into the bus. We've lived in the bus before, and we've literally traveled for about 3 of the last 4 years now, full time. And so we just thought, while we're traveling, we might as well bring something cool to the table, and let's see if we can help the community. We kind of wanted to, bring some fun back, bring the community back, and we kind of called it shaking hands and kissing babies again, where everybody's having fun and smiling and sweating together. And so, yeah, we're actually 3 stops away from the end now. We have Tucson, Mesa, and San Diego left. So we've done 7 stops already. And so for the last 2 months, we left on August 16th, and now we'll go until December 18th. We're kind of taking here the next couple weeks off because it's Thanksgiving here in the US. And just I knew nobody would show up the week before or the week after with, the holidays and stuff. So yeah, man, we're about 3 stops away from the end, but that's what we're up to right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Luke is popping in. He says, "Hey, fellas, great to have you here, Luke." So, Dustin, where are you guys right now? I may have missed it,
Nope.
but maybe I didn't. Where are you guys located right now?
So I am maybe like 10 miles from Carlsbad Caverns National Park in Carlsbad, New Mexico. And so Sunday, my wife and I went to Carlsbad and did the whole cave walk and all of that. And actually, when I get off of this call, we're going to head south again, back into Texas, and we're going to head to Big Bend National Park. And then we'll make our way to Tucson while we got a couple days left.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned it too when we got going. I mean, a month and a half. We haven't known each other or been connected that long. And we
Yeah.
we connected through Ryan Stuman's Apex group. I saw you active in there. I saw you on a couple calls in the group, and I really resonated with your story. I reached out and I was like, "Hey, Dustin, whatever I can do to help, let me know." We hopped on a Zoom call, and then you kind of brought me up to speed on where you were, and
Yeah.
from that call, there's you wrote a book since we last had that call, which is exciting, and it is the title of this live, Strength Through Struggle. So I'd like to kind of give people a sense of what they can expect from that book. Ultimately, it's a story of your life. I've been honored to be able to get a sneak peek at the first draft, and man, I sat down and I read it straight through, 2.5 hours. You sent it to me. I jumped right in, and man, honestly, I cried at parts of it, because there's some really powerful and sad and scary and moving parts to your story, and I resonated to parts of it, and I want people here to be able to resonate to some of that in the story. So I guess probably the best way to kind of take it back is, let's start with the struggle, and move up on forward. So just give people, we don't have 2 hours here to get the whole picture up, but give people an idea of some of the struggle. Maybe place it back, back in the biker days, when things were moving fast and going crazy. Bring people up to speed on that, and where you were and what was going on, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, so even to go a little bit farther back, I played sports growing up my whole life, and in about 16, I made a decision to not play sports anymore, and that was really all I even went to school for. The rest of it didn't really matter to me. So that was a tough decision. I went through some turmoil with some coaches and stuff, and from that point, I started making my own decisions, doing my own thing, and that was ultimately where things started to maybe not turn out so well. Turns out you shouldn't start making your own choices at 16, but hey, man, here I am. From there, I started experimenting with drugs, sex, alcohol, women, going fast, 100 miles an hour, doing all these things. In 2008, I ultimately found the woman of my dreams. The second I laid my eyes on my wife, I knew that she was meant to be my wife, and I married her June 13th of 2009. And from there, from 2009 to 2012, we were kind of partying and doing the whole thing. And I was actually working for the railroad. So I was full-time traveling. So I would be gone for 6 days out of the week. And then I'd basically be home for like 24 to maybe 30 hours. And then I would leave again. And so the first, maybe 10 years of our marriage, that's what it looked like. And so I would get home, we would go to the bar, we would get drunk, we would have fun. Next day, pack my stuff and head back to work. And so, our relationship was good, so to speak, but we didn't really know each other. We never really got to know each other. And unfortunately, my wife had a disease called endometriosis, and she had told me the day I met her that she had it, and that there was a possibility that she wasn't ever going to be able to have kids. And at the time, it didn't really bother me. It was kind of like, okay, if we can, we can. If we can't, we can't. Whatever's supposed to happen will happen. And so from there, she had 5 surgeries, and the 5th one was actually a hysterectomy on our 3rd wedding anniversary, June 13th, 2012, where obviously we were no longer able to have children. She needed to do it for her health. It was probably one of the best decisions we ever made, especially in the frame of mind that we were in at the time. Just to go back a little bit, I was actually running around in some motorcycle clubs and kind of, doing some things that I maybe shouldn't have been doing. I like to call it going 100 miles an hour, like full speed, no drag. It was pretty wild. And I actually ended up, I was the president of my own, we called it a riding group, but I mean, we were in the shit. And so I had started actually taking some of my wife's prescription pain pills when I was in a volleyball tournament, and I hurt my elbow, and she gave me a couple of them, and man, they started to change my life. They hit me in a different way that I had never felt before. And from there, it kind of went south. And so from basically 2009 to 2012, I was experimenting with them, still drinking, still doing the whole thing. And by the time she had a hysterectomy, I was at a stage where I was taking 6,000 milligrams of prescription pills a day. and my life was completely out of control. I had put us in danger numerous times. I've, run-ins with the cops. I literally almost shattered a cop's windshield. About a month. She got it in June, so October 13th of 2012. I actually checked into a treatment center called Cornerstone of Recovery, and for prescription pills. And when I checked in with the psychologist, he said, "Hey man, what's your story?" I said, "I take 6,000 milligrams of prescription pills a day." And he said, "Holy cow!" I said, "What?" He said, "There's not too many of you left like that." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Most people like you are dead." And I said, "Well, it's a good thing that I'm not most people, my friend." And he said, "Yeah, you're lucky." And I said, "Yeah, I know. It's time. I'm ready. I checked in on my own. I knew it was time, and ultimately it started to change my life for the better moving forward. It wasn't all peaches and roses, but it definitely was the beginning of me starting to change some things for the better."
That is a very good summary of a lot of stories there. Can you maybe talk about the time you almost broke the police car's windshield?
Yeah,
Because
for
that
sure.
that story jumped right out at me.
Yeah, so it was about 3 in the morning, and it was September, and we lived in Nebraska, and so it was chill, like it was cold. We were in leather, and all that. And I had a piece of it's called a get back whip. It's about this long, and it's got this huge knuckle on the end of it, and it holds onto your handlebar, so you can just unclip it. And it's called a get back whip. Like if a car comes over, you can tap the car like, "Hey, I'm right here on my motorcycle, move over." Or you can use the buckle end and break somebody's window or beat somebody with it or whatever. And so we was coming home. It was about 3 a.m. and Tanya was on the back. She was completely recovered from her surgery. And we're going about 100 miles an hour, and I got pills in my pocket. I'm high as hell. We've been going all weekend, and I'm starting to like pass out, fall asleep, and she's beating on the back of my helmet, keeping me awake. And I make the last turn, and we got about a 20-mile stretch of back road in Nebraska. And so I knew we were good. I'll just go 100 miles an hour. We'll make this quick. We'll be home in no time. And so I'm flying down this road. I'm not concerned for deer, not like we're just rolling. And I see a car way up in front of me, and I had already like, okay, when I get so far, I'll just go around them, no big deal. And we're hauling ass, and all of a sudden, as I was literally just about to go around them, they just slammed on their brakes. I mean, from 65, 70 miles an hour to a dead stop. And it caught me off guard. I was high, I was tired, and bright lights, and it just got me. So I remember slamming on my brakes and like going to swerve over, and it instantly made me mad. Like I was furious. So I just reached up for that buckle. I unhooked it and I put it across my lap so I could grab the back end of it so that the buckle was on this end. And I'm still going, 80, 85 miles an hour. And as I go around the side of the truck, I'm literally like this, getting ready to shatter his windshield. And I looked over, and it was the Johnson County Sheriff, which was the county that Tanya and I lived in. And so he literally like dove down into the ditch with his truck, and I was just like, holy shit, I just about broke. So I was like this far into full swing, and I literally just set it back down in my lap, grabbed a hold of the handlebars. Then immediately it was like, oh man, I'm going to prison. I got more pills than I should ever have in my pocket. My wife is going to kill. Matter of fact, she'll just leave me. Like everything was turmoil right then and there. In a matter of 10 seconds, my entire life flashed in front of me. I just knew that dude was coming. So I was super, super high, but the first thought was, could I swallow all the pills that are in my vest, and could I make it out of that? Like, would I live, or, would I end up throwing up or whatever, where I would be busted anyway? And so like these were the thoughts running through my head, and I just kept watching my mirrors, and he had pulled down into the ditch, and I figured I had just scared him, and he was just waiting a second. And so I had about probably 2.5 miles before I needed to make a turn at the first stop sign, and he never came. And so I figured he just radioed in to town where the local cop was and the other sheriff was, and I figured he just radioed into them, and they was just gonna all nab me when I got into town. And so I'm rolling up to the stop sign, and I am like shaking, lit. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I know that my life is about to change immensely. and no one was there. So I took that right, and I hauled ass up down this hill and up the next one, and there was one more stop sign, and I figured maybe they'll be at that stop sign. So I get to the next stop sign and no one was there, and I was like, man, I'm home free. And so I literally 100 miles an hour flew into my driveway, opened the garage door, put the bike away, jumped off, and about that time she got off the back, and man, she let me have it. She every cuss word under the sun, and really let me understand what I had done, and how crazy things really were. And in about, I would say, really close to a month from that is when I actually checked into treatment. That was definitely a life-changing day. I would love to say that, like, God came down and changed me right then and there, but it didn't. I still did drugs. Matter of fact, I probably got worse because I knew how bad I was at that point. Now it was coming to fruition, like, man, I really am this bad. And so I was taking drugs before work, during work, at work, through lunch, basically from the time I was awake till the time I went to bed. And so yeah, like once I ran out of pills about a month later on a Wednesday, that was the end for me. I went through some wicked withdrawals, and I finally I called an EAP. It's called an Employee Assistance Program. I was a wreck. I literally looked at my wife and I said, yo, I'm either going to rob the fucking pharmacy or I need to go get some help. And she said, well, maybe it's time to go get some help. And so I ultimately called right then and there. The dude said, when do you want to go? Next week, next month, next year? I said, man, I needed to be there yesterday. Get me out of here as fast as you can. And so, yeah, ultimately, like I said, I ended up in treatment for 34 days in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Wow. Yeah. I thought that story kind of was a synopsis of your whole life at that point.
Yeah.
Coming together. I'm sure it wasn't the only one like that, but it kind of jumped out at me, and I thought it told the story well. So I appreciate you running through that.
For sure.
So you get into treatment, and all of that, but there's an underlying theme that resonated with me in the book. And that is like your relationship with your wife. Like my wife and I, we've been married 4 or 5 years now. I had to think there and do some quick math, because I know she'd listen to this. We've been married, and it's not been all peaches and roses, as you say. Like, marriage is hard. It's hard either way. It's hard to do it right, and it's hard to do it wrong. Right.
Sure.
There's work that you do either preemptively or after the fact. But one of the things that you talk about is, like, it was tough. You were away from each other often, and then where she was sick quite a lot, or struggling with her disease, there was like zero sex. There was nothing on that plane that you guys were able to partake in. Like, how was that before you kind of checked into rehab, and then as things got going, because it was kind of a long journey for you guys, wasn't it? Can you kind of bring people up to speed on that, and
yeah, for sure. Unfolded? So one thing that I will say before I go into all of that is my wife is literally my ride or die, man. She's been through me with the motorcycle club. She's been through me with, not having a job. She's been through me 4 years of traveling in a school bus. Like, this woman is different than any other woman on the planet. She's truly amazing. And it's so cool that a lot of people see, like, man, how did you guys get through that all the way? And ultimately, I bring some of it back to both of our parents. Her parents this year have celebrated, I believe, 41 years of marriage. And what's today? The 23rd. In 2 days, my parents celebrate 49 years of marriage. And so we had a good base, and we knew that when we said I do, didn't mean like I do until I don't want to anymore. It's kind of that, like, we're in this shit together, and we're going to get through it one way or the other, till death do us part, if it has to, if you know what I'm saying. So and so ultimately, man, we struggled some with sex. I know when I was doing drugs and we were running pretty wild, I was flirting with other women, and that's sort of some of the lifestyle that I was leading and things like that. And after she had a hysterectomy, we went about 5 years and doing some different things and trying some different stuff. And ultimately, because of the hysterectomy, because of all the hormone imbalances, because of all the feelings that she felt, ultimately she felt broken or not whole. And so obviously it's hard to feel sexy. Plus you got a husband that has been beating you down mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. Like when I checked into treatment, we owed on 3 vehicles, 2 motorcycles, a house, and we had a $12,500 credit card that we owed like $12,148 on or some shit like that. Like we owed everybody. And so we were upside down completely, and ultimately it was we settled in and we decided to do it together. And so even through that stuff and working together on ourselves. And most people are like, what do you mean by that? Like when I got out of treatment, I started focusing on me, and when I got out of treatment, she started focusing on her, and we ultimately ended up going to AA and NA together and doing meetings and making amends and saying we're sorry and doing all these things for ourselves. Well, as we did it together, we became closer. And at that point, we started doing some fitness and things like that. But we still wasn't perfect. We still wasn't, A-okay. And so ultimately, with her situation and my situation, sex was always kind of a weird topic. When we first got together, it was not a problem. We were running and gunning. But as she got worse in endometriosis, obviously a painful situation in your pelvic area, you ain't trying to have sex. And then like she's always said, like, that's the last thing I want to do when I'm hurting. And it's like, no, I totally understood. And so it's been a lot of, push and pull and figure it out sort of along the way. But ultimately, it's been, yeah, she's had to do some hormone therapy. I've done some hormonal therapy and stuff like that. But ultimately from 2012 to 2017, we were a lot of just roommates, a lot of just like living together, a lot of just, getting by, so to speak. And plus I was still traveling on the road. And so it wasn't like we was home a lot together. And so, yeah, we slept together, but not slept together. Ultimately it came to a head in 2017. I actually was basically like, yo, I have needs and you have needs and you can't feel my needs and I can't feel your needs. And I know that you need space and things like that. But I ultimately sat her down and convinced her for me to sleep with another woman in the town that I was working in. And she was okay with it. She said, just tell me everything that happens from point A to point Z. And so like the following week, I did a little of this, did a little of that. The next week, this, and we kept moving forward. And it basically came to the week that the magic was going to happen. Right. And so I left for work like any Monday morning that I normally would. And we both knew what ultimately was going to possibly happen that week. And I got about an hour down the road and I got a text message that said, whatever you do, don't go through with it. And I was like, okay. And she was scared to death that I was going to be upset. She was scared that I was going to be, beat down or chew her ass or whatever. And ultimately what that was for me was like, she was finally willing to fight for our marriage. She was finally willing to be involved. She knew what my needs were. She knew that we needed to make some changes, and ultimately I needed to make some changes. And so her stepping in and saying, whatever you do, don't do it, because it's going to ruin everything that we do have. And ultimately that's what saved our marriage. From there, we ended up selling all of our stuff, and I'm going to go into that real quick. Just when we literally sold everything we owned, we got down to 6 totes worth of stuff, like 6 moving totes worth of stuff. And all of 2018, she traveled full time with me. So we went to 25 different states. We drove like 30,000 miles. But what 2018 was for us was the actually realizing who my wife was. She got to realize who her husband was. We got to meet each other. We got to go on dates. We got to go see cool stuff across the country. We got to spend time together. We got to enjoy each other's presence. We got intimate. And it literally was what that woman that I was going to sleep with, it sounds crazy, but ultimately it was the beginning of saving our entire marriage and learning about each other and realizing that we are made for each other, and we just got to do better at communicating, and we got to do better at what we need and stuff like that. And so ultimately that situation helped us get to where we are today.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's that's a powerful that was a powerful crossroads. I mean, you guys, you kind of laid it out in the book too. You guys were communicating through the process. and kind of struggling with your own needs, right? Like she, like you said, wasn't feeling sexy, really just needed to just be, and you had this need, and then you went up to a point, but then you pulled back together, and it was,
Yep.
it's powerful and real and raw, and I think that there's a lot of things to be learned from the candor that you guys carried. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I hope that hope it resonates with people, because there's what would you say, like, so after that point, was it the communication that was the biggest thing? Like, did you guys unload a lot of stuff? Was it just the fact that you were finally together after all these years of you being on the road?
I
Or
I think it was a lot of us being together. And ultimately, dude, it sounds crazy, but when you get down to nothing and all you have is each other, you start to learn really, really quick. And at that time, excuse me, we were traveling in a pickup and we were living in motel rooms. And so, our room was 300 square feet and we had a microwave and a mini fridge. Like, that was all we had, plus 6 totes worth of stuff. And when I say 6 totes, I'm talking like camping gear, hiking gear, snowboard gear, a suitcase, that type of, like, I'm not talking, all the go-go's and whistles. Like, that was all we had. And one tote was all of our cooking stuff. And so, like, ultimately what I have found, and it's still the way we live today, but when I have less, it's easier to work through your stuff. When I have less, it's easier to figure out what you actually need, right? Because we think we need all kind of shit. And until you get rid of everything and you have nothing, you realize what you have is actually really rad and it's important, and it's really all you need. And so it was a group of a lot of things. And at that time too, in 2018, we were really, really working on ourselves. We were in the self-development. We were in the, starting to think about being entrepreneurs. We were starting to think about, we were obviously full-time traveling. And so we knew that we couldn't necessarily have kids. And so it was like, the wheels were starting to turn, and it was like, man, we don't have to do this alone. We can do this together, and we can grow faster, or we can learn more, or we can get bigger, or we can do whatever. But as long as we keep moving forward, that's our biggest thing, man. Ultimately, she says 5 words to me that absolutely drive me nuts, and it's, baby, we just got to keep going. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, some days I can't just keep going, but that's she says it over and over again, when you're in the dumps, when you're down and out. And like, those are my least favorite words to hear, because some days I just want to quit, and some days she just wants to quit, and the other one just says, hey, we just got to keep going. It's all we can do. We got to keep going. And so ultimately, like, that's our motto. Oh, the bus blew up. Cool, man. We just got to keep going. Oh, you got shot. Oh, cool, man. You just got to keep going. Like, whatever it is, you just got to keep going. It's all going to work itself out.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's so the physical, confinement almost, and then getting rid of everything, because I know you mentioned selling everything. You had multiple vehicles, multiple bikes. You mentioned in the book, going and someone came up and said, how much for these things, and you're like, I don't know, a couple dollars, and then you're like, I didn't even remember having that kind of stuff, right?
That was the craziest thing, man. And it's still, to this day, we still laugh about it. Like, I literally have no idea what we sold that lady. And we're the ones that set the tables up. We're the ones that priced everything. We're the ones that set it all out, everything. And this lady said, hey, how much for this? My wife was like, I don't know, $5. And she said, well, how much for this? And she said, I don't know, $5. And she said, well, how much for both? She said, I don't know, $5. And so the lady's like, I'll take it. She handed her $5. She walked off, and I was walking around the corner of the house. And I said, cool, babe, what'd you sell? And she was like, that big pot that you make chicken noodle soup in. And I'm not really sure. And I said, what do you mean? So she said, I don't know. Let me go look. She said, I don't have any idea. I said, well, let me look. I look all over the table. We look at each other. I said, and it's official. We have too much shit when you can't even tell me what we just sold to somebody.
Yeah.
And to this day, neither one of us know what we sold that lady.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And now, I mean, we touched on it earlier, but you're in the bus. She's, I think she's sitting right across the table from you as we're recording this, right?
She's literally 5 feet from me.
Yeah, yeah. So you guys live in that bus. You live and sleep and eat and cook and all of that stuff and travel. That's a pretty big difference from pre-yard sale, pre all of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because we lived in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. We had a huge garage. Like I was building the hot rod project. Like I had the 6-foot toolboxes and all the tools and everything. And yeah, like ultimately we got down to nothing. And today, if you actually just measured the square foot of the floor, we have like maybe 80 square feet in our entire bus. But then if you consider the entire living area, it's like 100 square feet. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like, and we've been living in this bus for approximately a full year together. And so,
That's
like I
amazing.
said, we 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Then we moved into a studio apartment before we decided to travel. And then it was motel room after motel room. And you just realize that we were just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then one day we were like, hey, we should live in a bus. And ultimately, this is the second bus that I've built for us, but the first one that we actually lived in full time.
Wow. Wow. That's cool. I think there's
Yeah.
something to be said for that. I mean, we've been the last 4 weekends, completely unrelated, but I've taken a van load full every weekend. We're just getting rid of stuff. We have some stuff from Alyssa's mom when she passed away, and just stuff that we've been given. It's like we're just cleaning out. We've got the new baby coming. We've got to make space, and it's just so therapeutic.
Yeah, and
To
that's
just
what I'm saying. Most people don't realize how much stuff you have until it's time to literally sell everything. And it's like, babe, we got 4 spaghetti spoons. Like, what do we have 4 spaghetti spoons for? You know what I mean? But you don't realize that on the day to day until
yeah,
it's you start getting rid of it and getting rid of it. And it's like, holy cow. Now that like we have 4 plates, 2 cups, 2 pans, like that's it. And so we're used to this now,
I
when we
love
were
it.
living in Utah last year, yeah, it was like when it was time to leave again, it was like, man, we accumulated a ton of stuff over the year. I'm ready to live back with hardly anything because it's clearer, it's easier. You don't have all these choices. You don't have all these things that you feel like you have to do. It's like I got 10 t-shirts and a few pairs of pants and this is all I got. So this is what I'm doing.
I love it. I love it. There's a nugget in there,
Yeah.
that a lot of us could take. So bring us back to, I don't remember the timeline exactly, but there was a point where Dustin looked a whole lot different than you do now.
Yeah.
You were surviving on Mountain Dew, and a plethora of other things. But bring us back to that point and kind of the fitness journey through there.
Yeah, so most people have seen the what I like to call the sideshow Bob picture of me with my hairs like this all out. My wife was literally about to put my hair in dreadlocks, and so we had to fluff it all out. Um, but from there, I was 260 pounds. About when I checked into treatment, I was 260 pounds. Zero muscle. I was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I was drinking 12 Diet Mountain Dews a day. I was, Pizza Hut pizza was 3 times a week. Eat it till it's gone type of deal. Obviously, at this point, man, I was on depression medication and I was on prescription pills. I was on Bush Light pills. I was on Mountain Dew. Food didn't. I ate whatever and did whatever. And when I got to treatment, just from not doing drugs and just from not, being crazy as hell, I literally lost 14 pounds just in treatment in 34 days. Not from exercising or anything crazy. Like it was just my body was just swollen and full and nasty. And so when I left treatment, I knew we needed to do something and to kind of curtail our other situations. I knew we were in really bad debt and we weren't going to be able to cover it in, a month or two. And I knew our relationship wasn't completely solid, but we was still in love and we could work on it, but it was going to take a long time. And I knew we were broke as shit. I didn't have any money. So it wasn't like I could start fixing all these things immediately when I got home. So ultimately, I realized that fitness was free. I could do push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, squats, lunges, go for a run, of shadow boxing, whatever I wanted to do. All that was free. Like I didn't even need shoes if I didn't want to wear shoes. You know what I'm saying? If I woke up on a dirt floor, buck ass naked, I could do fitness. And so because we were so broke, it was like, hey, let's start working out a little bit. And so we went out in the garage that we had, and every day we would pop in a DVD of Tony Horton P90X or some shit that we had, and we just started doing fitness, and it wasn't like we knew what we were doing, but we started making better choices. So I switched from smoking cigarettes to chewing tobacco just for something different. So it was like a switch, and I
A
knew that
reset.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, yep. And then I went from 12 sodas to 6 sodas, and then 6 sodas to 3 sodas, and 3 to 1, and then 1 to every other day. And then it was merely just choices like that. Like before I went to treatment, man, we were like the cheesy casserole kings. Everything was potatoes and meat and cheese and, the whole deal. And ultimately after that, it was just slow. And by slowly, I mean over them 4 or 5 years, it was like, okay, we started eating better. We started exercising more. We started taking care of our bodies. We were paying our debt off. We were going to work every day. We were making smart choices. And ultimately, that was the beginning of 2016. I actually trained to wrestle in a old man's division. It's this Nebraska thing called the Cornhusker State Games, and I figured it'd be really cool, like a bunch of old 30 some year old dudes. Turns out the Olympic team had just left for the U.S. Olympics, and the entire wrestling team that didn't go showed up at that old man's tournament. I got my ass kicked. Yeah, them dudes are for real, man. And so yeah, it was fun. It was something to do, and so from there, I started doing some more lifting and doing some more stuff like that. And ultimately in 2018, I got certified as a nutrition coach and started my first company. It was called Sunrise Nutrition and Fitness. And my wife followed along. She was, along my journey with me. And she decided to get certified herself as well. And so we just went in together and started our first little company online and slinging meal plans on the weekends. I was still working for the railroad, obviously. And that was kind of the beginning of it. Heck, this year now we've started a different company and taken a lot more of a facet at it. We're doing the fitness, we're doing the mindset and all the things now. But yeah, August 14th, both of us actually did our first bodybuilding show of this year. And so, yeah, it's literally from 3 packs of cigarettes and 6,000 milligrams of prescription pills to this year we both performed in our first bodybuilding show. So it's been quite a ride.
Sounds like a documentary. 3 packs to 6 packs is in order here.
Hey, there you go. Maybe that'll be my next book.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, no, it's an incredible journey, especially when you put the before and after pictures side by side, and you've shared that multiple times on social media. And if you guys aren't following Dustin Johnson on Facebook, get in touch. Find him, follow him. He puts a lot of heart and soul into his posts. He's real. He's raw. I feel like I say those 2 words in conjunction with you, whenever I chat about you. But yeah, the just the side by sides are crazy, that you shared, and I think it comes down to, there's a lot of mindset shift. There was some pretty major stuff you guys were working through internally, and that's what helped it stick. But you also, you mentioned the 12 pack down to 6 pack, down to 3 a day, down to nothing, with just taking the Mountain Dew as an example. And I think that's something that, we're coming up on the season where everyone's going to go cold turkey and jump in and start working out, and then it's going to fizzle out. And I think there's a lot more to working out than that. I think ultimately people need to get their mind right before they get there, try and tackle that. But there's something to be said for, hey, just take a walk every day. Take a 30-minute walk. Maybe cut down on 1 scoop of ice cream. Just be kind to yourself and do the change that's sustainable. I think that's a key part of the story that I got out of it from you.
Yeah, and like we wrote a book literally called How to Live a Healthy Lifestyle, and it's literally like the 5 basic principles that we followed in them 5 years before we really started counting macros and learning about food and all this stuff. But it was literally eat mostly whole foods, drink mostly water, exercise every day, get plenty of sleep, and get some sun. And if people just start with them 5 principles, it will ultimately get you going and moving so that you can get to a point where you can make them choices to make them adjustments. And okay, I want to do something different, or I want to, start to count calories, or I want to, train for this event or whatever. But like you said, if most people would just start with them 5 principles, it'll make the entire living a healthy lifestyle, and you'll never have to diet again.
Yeah, it's huge. It's you can pick it up on Amazon here, How to Live a Healthy Lifestyle. And if you buy a shirt, I don't know if he does this with every order, but I got another one. So I actually have 2 copies of your book now. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
That's awesome. If you would do me a favor, do you guys have them birdhouse book library things in Canada, like at parks? Put one in there, because somebody I'll reach that I never would have reached before.
I'll do it. I might order some more and do some more of that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, like somebody said that a while back, because a lot of our friends write books and things like that, and so I end up with other people's and a ton of them, and so yeah, put them in them birdhouses if you would, because then somebody walking by is going to come across the book to somebody they don't ever know.
I love that. Man.
Yeah.
Now we get, we circled back. We kind of covered, a bit of the fitness journey. Check out the shirts. I think they're really cool. They've got sponsors, and I got a big care package. So I really appreciate that, Dustin. I posted about it the other day.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we get to, the last couple of years have been a really intense journey as well, culminating in, I believe it was, I don't remember the date, but there was, you were outside in the van having a conversation with yourself where, you thought that was going to be the end. Bring us on that journey and walk us through that. And then, we'll kind of wrap up with the events of this year in Frisco, but
yes.
bring us on that journey through to where you were kind of sitting with yourself, ready to end it all.
Yeah. So I got chills. So that usually means God's with me now. So I just told my wife this morning, it was almost 11 months ago to the day that I was sitting in the bus. I was really dark and depressed, and I know it's like, man, how did all this happen? And honestly, I couldn't put my finger on nothing. I was going through some stuff, and nothing was really working, and it was just kind of really, really heavy on me. And honestly, I still don't know what's caused it or anything like that. I'm still working through some stuff, but ultimately we was at work on a Saturday, and my wife and I, my birthday's on December 21st. And so it was that weekend, and I knew she would throw a party. And I was like, yo, you didn't throw a party, right? Cause I was really down in the slumps, and I really didn't want to be around people. I didn't really want to do I was just stuck in my own head, and I didn't want to deal with that. And she got mad as hell before we went to work. She said, gosh darn it, how come you always ruin all my surprises? And she starts chewing my ass again, and I'm just like, I don't know why you're yelling at me right now, but I don't want to do this. And so I thought I'd be nice, and I gave her the steak that we had left in the fridge for lunch. So I packed our lunches to go to work. I gave her the steak. I took turkey burger. And I get to work, and my boss is yelling at me, telling me I should be doing this and should be doing that. And it was like everything, the motion was running, and everything was really heavy that day. And it became lunchtime, and I was in a bad mood. And she came over and sat by me, and she opened up her bowl, man. And she took the first bite of steak, and she just looked at me and she said, God, the steak is chewy. And that was it for me. Like, I literally looked at her. I grabbed my bowl. I stood up. I pushed my chair in, and I walked out of the place we were working at. I got into the bus because it was out in the parking lot, and I was just bawling. I was sitting in the bus, just absolutely bawling my eyes out. And I was at the end, man. I couldn't take another second. I absolutely hated everything about my life. I hated how I felt. I hated who I was. I hated everything. And so I ultimately started contemplating suicide. And I'm sitting here, and the only question that rings in my head was, would they even hear it if I did it? By them, I mean the people that were in the shop. And I just kept like, man, would they even fucking hear it if I did this right now? Like, does it even fucking matter if I do this right now? And I'm bawling, and I just got this overwhelming sense of like, yeah, this is it for me. I'm out. I've had enough. I feel like shit. I hate myself. I hate everything. And all of a sudden, man, like I can't even explain how it came to me. Like I feel something or hear something or whatever it was, but I like to call it God for my sake. And ultimately, what was basically whispered into my ear, I'll call it, was, do you know the way you feel right now? And I was kind of like, yeah, like I feel God off. Like I'm horrible. And it was basically like, well, the way you feel right now, you feel is going to end if you end it all. And I was like, basically like, yeah, that's exactly what I feel. And they were like, unfortunately, that's not how it works. So it basically works like, if you do that, then the feeling you have right now goes on forever. And all I could think of was Smalls off of Sandlot, forever, forever. And I was just like, man, and it was like for eternity, this feeling will last forever. Like this is all you'll ever feel ever again. And I was just like, man, like that was really heavy. And I remember crying and like, well, I can't do that. And it was like, well, then you got one choice. Like you can get up and you can do whatever you have to do to feel even just a smidge better for the rest of your life so that you don't ever feel like this again. And it was just like, huh. And like I wrote in my book, it didn't change my life. It obviously stopped me from committing suicide, but it did, like my life didn't get better immediately click that day, but it was like it removed an option from me, because at that point I was like, there is no fucking way I want to spend one more second feeling like I felt inside, feeling like I did about myself, feeling what I was feeling. And so ultimately I needed to get up from that spot and do whatever I could for the rest of my life to feel even just a smidge better than I did that day. And so ultimately, December 21st of last year, sitting literally the seat that I'm sitting in right now, that was the conversation I was having in this bus. And so fast forward, it was God. Like I said, to me, it was God talking to me and made perfect sense. In April, I went to a mastermind in Dallas, Texas, and there was a couple of speakers that I had never heard before, or some that I had never even heard of before. And so I wanted to go check them out. And I just left that business that I was working at because we was getting ready to move back into the bus. And so we flew down there, and the dude that opened, was a pastor at a church. And for some reason, the second that this guy opened the event, his mouth opened and I just started crying, and I knew that I needed Pastor Keith in my life. I don't know why, but he was talking about God, and he was talking about being happy, and it was that feel good. Like he gave me hope. And so, them 4 months had been rough up until then, but I knew that I didn't have a second option anymore. So I knew I needed to keep moving forward. And so ultimately he gave me a bunch of hope, and I'm literally sitting there bawling my eyes out, listening to this guy speak. And it really hit me, and he kept saying God and people. Like he would talk about God, and then he would say, talk about people. And I was like, man, I need some God in my life, and I need some different people in my life. And so the last person that spoke on the next day, he closed the event out, was a guy by the name of Steve Weatherford. And he literally went up there. The second he opened his mouth, I was like, I need this guy in my life. And lo and behold, he talks about God and people and his struggle with drugs and all this stuff. And it just completely resonated with me. But it was like, man, I need God in my life, and I need different people in my life. And so ultimately, the funny thing is now they both live in Frisco, Texas. They both, Pastor Keith actually is the lead pastor and it's been his church for like 25 years now. And Steve actually moved down there partly for the church and all of that. So I've actually got to meet both of them in person and stuff now, and work a little bit with them and stuff like that. But from April, then I started watching church online every Sunday. We would watch online, and kind of start to do the church thing, but I wasn't necessarily bought in, so to speak, and
because it wasn't a part of your life up to that point. I mean, you were raised Catholic, I think it was, right? But it wasn't really a part of your life, right?
Yeah, so I was Catholic up until I turned 21 and joined the railroad. Basically, when I joined the railroad, it was a perfect excuse to leave church and leave God, and I'll just do everything on my own. Plus, I was 21. Like, I can drink now. I can do whatever I want. I don't need anybody else. I don't need anything else. And so ultimately, at 21, I stopped going to church. I stopped praying. I stopped doing any of that. And religion was weird to me anyhow. And so from there, ultimately, I was just doing my own thing. And so even going back to church, like, although it's like, I don't know if you call it non-denominational, it's not a religion, it's a church. But it was just kind of that weird feeling, but he was saying different stuff that I'd never heard before. And he was talking about real life stuff. And so it made sense to me, because I dropped out of 3 colleges. Like, I have experience. I have real life experience. I don't have, biblical, oh, this was perfect and all that. Like, I just have experience. And so when you talk experience to me, that's what makes sense to me. And so as he was talking online and stuff, there was many a times that I'd be balling, sitting on our couch watching from Utah. And so we went out on tour, and I knew we were going to go through Dallas or Frisco, which is basically where that church was. And we knew that we wanted to stop there. Like, we've been watching online, we at least got to go one time and check it out. And so we we ran into a buddy the week before, and he ended up actually, like, us and him and his daughter ended up sitting down. We were supposed to catch a workout, but instead caught like a 8-hour conversation, unsubscribed, unplanned, about God. And it was like this weird situation. We were at this CrossFit gym, and it, nobody could have wrote the book except for God like this. And so we literally sat down for 8 hours talking about Jesus and all this. And ultimately, my buddy Eric said, "Hey, man, do you guys have Bibles?" And we said, "No." And he said, "Cool, let's go down. I'm going to buy you guys some Bibles, and then let you head out." And so he bought us our first Bibles, and it was really cool. Well, about 3 days later, we got to Dallas, and that night they were having what they called a she gathering. So my wife got to go and meet the women, and actually meet Pastor Keith's wife, and kind of, get connected with the church. And man, she just loved it. And the next day, I had an event for men called Warriors Night, and that was it for me. I got called out in front of 400 men that I literally knew nobody there except for the dude sitting next to me. I met him about 5 minutes before we went to the church. I had been bouncing back and forth with him online, on Instagram, and so I sat with him at the event, and we're sitting there and we're doing the whole thing, and we're talking, and like I said, it's a men's thing, so it was kind of uplifting and manly and things like that. And they basically said, who wants to make a donation tonight? And I was sitting there. The ultimate was to make $100,000 so that they could donate money. And I was like, man, I don't got that kind of money. I can't give that up. But something inside, like, God was talking to me again, like, you got money in the bus. You can cover this. Trust me. Stand up. Stand up. So I stood up, and Pastor Keith is the one putting it on. And he literally, he's counting, 50, 60, 70, 80. He says 125, 126. And he looks at me and he said, 127, what is your name? And I was like, oh man. I said, Dustin. And he just started like, hold on now. And he starts kind of doing this number. He said, Dustin, God's kind of talking to me right now for you. And he said, I feel like you've been running pretty hard lately. And I said, yeah, you got that right. And he said, all right. He said, I feel like God kind of has you on a journey right now, and I feel like it's all over the place. And I was like, yeah, man, we're actually on tour right now. And he said, yeah, you're on a tour, all right. And I said, yeah. And he said, man, I feel like you've given up your entire life to do this. And I said, yeah, like, I don't, yes, I've given up my entire life to do this. And he said, Dustin, why don't you come down here? God has some things that he wants to kind of say to you. And so I went down, and he started prophesying over me and puts his hand on my head. And we have this really intimate conversation about, looking for a father, and him being my father and all this stuff. And it was just really, really powerful. And ultimately I got that video back about a week ago. So I've now been able to watch it since and kind of make sense of it for myself. Cause at the time, man, it was just like, holy cow, what is going on right now? It's, I got my hands in the air and all these people are clapping and all this stuff. But so ultimately, God called me out in Frisco, Texas, in front of 400 men, of none of which I knew, in a church of nobody I had ever seen before. And, no one knew who I was or my story. And he basically said, hey, man, I'm with you. Like, I'm running with you. This is me and you together. So I just want you to know, kind of keep going. There's a plan here. We're moving forward. And it was very, like, it melted me. I'm crying. One of the dudes that had his hand on me, like, he said, dude, you were shaking. And I said, I was like 800 degrees inside. I was sweating, and it was a really cool moment for me. And so when that was over, we said some prayers and stuff like that. And I kind of got connected into the church. And then that Tuesday, my wife and I decided to get baptized. And lo and behold, the only time they do baptisms at that church was the following Sunday. And we were going to be there. And I was like, well, if that ain't meant to be. And so my wife and I both were able to get baptized. We were both baptized at a very young age, and it, like, both of us felt like it wasn't our choice. And so we made the choice for ourselves. We wanted to do it together. We figured we got married together. Let's get baptized together. And so we got to do that, and then from there, yeah, it's just been a lot of cool opportunities have opened up, meeting you and doing podcasts. And then ultimately I preface this is kind of the ending of my book as well. As now since then, like, man, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do anything. It's a lot of Christianity in our household, and like we dove head into it all, as I feel there's a humongous calling on me right now, to you always call it real and raw, and ultimately, man, I've found that my vulnerability pulls other people's walls down and allows them to not only feel my pain, but to kind of let go of some of their pain too. And so ultimately, like, I believe that's part of my purpose right now, is to share my testimony, to get on as many platforms like this as I can, to ultimately let people know that even though someone like me can be who I was in the clubs and the women and the speed and all this shit, and still run with God, and still be, saved by Jesus and all this. And so I feel like part of my purpose in life right now is to share my testimony. And every time I do, man, he praises and opens the next door, and here's another podcast. Or ultimately, in my case, I jumped on a Zoom call with a man named Lewis that I didn't really know, and he kept saying this stuff like, man, when you going to tell people your story? When you going to write a book? When you going to tell people this story? And that guy named Lewis is actually the one I'm on this call with right now. And he said, you need to write a book. And I was like, oh man, I've been thinking about it. And when we got off of that Zoom call, I literally sat down for the next 48 hours and wrote 24,000 words. It was the entire Strength Through Struggle book. And then I sent it to Lewis literally the following day. He's texting me, man, I'm crying, this is crazy, you got to share this with the world. And I immediately got that like imposter, like, I'm not going to share it with nobody, I'm not going to do anything with it, I'll just keep it to myself. And he was like, why would you do that, man? You got to share this with the world. So the following week, I actually went back to like self-edit and kind of read and add in some things, and ultimately I added about 10,000 more words. So it's going to come in about 35,000 words the way it is right now. My book's currently at the editor, getting edited. She's making all her notes, and then I'll go back and rewrite whatever I need to rewrite. I got my cover maker, it's in the shape of a cross, and half of the face is Jesus and half of the face is mine, and so he's working on that, and ultimately, because Lewis pushed me to write the book, because he was the last person I was going to allow tell me to write the book, I actually asked Lewis to write the foreword for me. And man, I got chills. You sent that to me last week. I was in tears rolling down my face. Tanya's like, man, what's the matter? And I said, Lewis just sent me the foreword. And she's like, so read it to me. And I was like, I would, but I can't. Like, it's making me tear up. And so it's all this has happened in like the last 2.5 months of my life. And so it's just been really, I like to call it, I'm going 100 miles an hour in slow motion. So, nothing really happens. And then in 48 hours, I write an entire book, or, the next thing you know, you're on another podcast. Or ultimately, I ended up actually just telling my story in Steve Weatherford's coaching group. And so it's just been like a lot of cool opportunities have opened up since the night at Warrior Night. And ultimately, I just keep pushing forward, and whatever door is open, man, I'm willing to do whatever we have to kind of get the word out and share my story.
And man, wow, there's so much to unpack in there. And it is, I think you worded it so well. Your vulnerability pulls out parts of people that they may not even know is there. Right. I've been through a journey this year, and that's a story for another time. But that's what it pulled out in me when we initially connected was parts of my vulnerability, parts of where I've had to get real with myself and honest with myself, and you just lay it out. You've got nothing to hide. You've been there. You've done that. You're not scared of your story, and that is powerful for people, because a lot of people, we grow up hiding parts of ourselves from certain people. We grow up hiding from ourselves. We grow up lying to ourselves. We grow up where it's just there's so many facets of our life that we let ourselves step into at certain times, whereas you've just been full throttle living your life, not giving a care what people thought. I mean, that there may have been moments where you cared, but as a whole,
Sure.
it was pretty wide open. So to see the story, I love the stories you shared today, and I really appreciate you doing this, and kind of bringing people. Honestly, guys, you got a preview into some of the nuggets from the book.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
more. There's
Yeah.
a lot of more of similar stories to what you shared, and then kind of culminating with that warrior night where things kind of came to a head, and you've kind of gone on a journey with God it's been really cool to watch. You dive into that, and you continue to be real and raw and vulnerable with people about the struggles. I think it was the other day it was Gomer, I think was you're going
Yeah.
through numbers, and you kind of just made a post, but like you're real in a relatable sense. And so you're reading through the Bible, right? And kind of, letting the world see it through your lens. And it's really cool. And this is why I did tell you several times on the call, man. It's like, you've got to share this story. I knew you'd already written a book before, so it wasn't that much of a stretch, which apparently it wasn't. You sat down and, you wrote the book, but it's so cool to read it. And then reading through that when you sent it, I was moved, and it really resonated with me. And then when you asked me to write the foreword, I had some imposter syndrome. It was
Sure.
like, man, like how can I do this? But I really appreciate the opportunity, and people need to hear the story. So it's
Yeah,
been
man.
a cool journey.
For me, like, the book was crazy because I wrote all them words in 48 hours, and it was like I'd never stop. It was just like, just type it all out, just go. And so when it was time to go back and like start to re-edit, it started to hit me. I would be and back to that 100 miles an hour in slow motion. I'd be like, oh, I need to share this. Click, 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 click. And it was like I had to feel them emotions. I had to feel what I was experiencing then, and I had to basically work through that stuff on my own. And there was several times I ended up crying in my own as I'm writing my own book, or talking with my wife about some really deep stuff that has been on my heart, or that I never even realized until I started writing it, until I started speaking it out, so to speak. And one of the things that I've realized is that my story's crazy, and I know a lot of people got a lot of crazy stories, but we go back to the vulnerability, and we go back to the whole thing. I think ultimately for me, I realized that my life is crazy, and most people, when they hear it, it's like, holy shit, how is this guy still alive? And I've never stopped to think that through. I've never slowed down from 100 miles an hour to actually take the time to, like, damn, look at all the things you've done. How many people can say they've traveled in a school bus and traveled 4 years and, done all these things. And it's when I stop to start to see that stuff, it slows everything down for me. And it's like, holy cow, like, I'm always the, go 100, let's rock and roll. And now it's like, I like to say, like when you sent that forward to me and you wrote all them words were completely true. But I don't ever stop to think about things like that. So as I'm reading your foreword, it's like, gives me chills, because it's like, man, he's talking about you. Like, this is you. This is who you are. You know what I mean? And so it kind of hit me. And when I got done with the book and I was ready to send it to the editor, it came clear to me that I had to write that book, because that book was who I was. And moving forward with God, it's who I am. And so I needed to, like, heal that, close that, end that chapter of my life, and including the bus. When we're done with the tour here, we're actually going to move to Frisco, Texas, and settle down and stuff like that. And so ultimately, like, I feel like this last couple months and I'm in this weird season where I'm kind of tying up some loose ends and finishing who I was, and really stepping into who I actually am as a person and as a human being, and who I want to be moving forward. And so I needed to write that book to kind of tie it all together.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. And I think I've been seeing a lot, the people that we're connected with, talking a lot about anchors and letting go of anchors. I've seen 2 or 3 people all talking about the theme, and that's kind of what you've done, is you've put this into writing. I imagine it was a pretty cathartic experience.
Yeah.
The image of typing away and then kind of coming to a full stop to really feel that moment. That comes through in the pages, and which is why I think you were at an event and I said, man, like, I'm so glad you did this. And you're like, well, I might not do it. And I was like, dude, stop right there.
Yeah.
I think I sent you a voice message or a video message. I was going to call you, but I think you were in an event, and I was like, you got to do it, because you've put it down, and you're going to change the world. You're going to, even if only one person benefits from reading the story, that's massive, right?
Sure.
So, man, it's I appreciate you jamming here. I appreciate there's so many angles we can take with this, but anyone who's listening, connect with Dustin. There's some gold that he's dropping. He's very open sharing his story. I've been blessed connecting with him hugely, and really, it's there's some stuff percolating in my life because of our connection that we'll chat about once I kind of figure out what that is. But it's it's powerful. It's a powerful story. So, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I appreciate, your wife being willing for you to tell the stories that you tell.
Yeah. That's what most people don't understand, is like, she's literally right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. But being willing to tell the parts of the story where she comes into it too, right? Because you're putting both of your story out there. So definitely extend that to her, that appreciation from me and from the listeners, for that to come out there. So to wrap up here, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find the book when it drops? What's the best way to stay in touch with you on this journey?
So I would say follow me on social media. On Instagram, it's Dustin G. On both Instagram and Facebook, it's Dustin G. Johnson. There's a famous golfer named Dustin Johnson, so it's hard to get any words in edgewise with that guy. So mine's Dustin G. Johnson. I am actually building a website right now that is dustingjohnson.com, and then obviously my book will be on there, and blog posts and things like that. But ultimately, if you friend me or follow me on Instagram or whatever those things do, don't be afraid to message me either. Like, I love talking to people. I love hearing people's stories or helping them through their stories. Part of the gift I have is that vulnerability and actually seeing other people and where I can pull some things out in them and things like that. And so I usually spend a good portion of a week like helping other people out. So if you got questions or you need help with something, I'm always here.
I love it, my friend. So guys, give him a follow. I'll put links in the show notes to this. If you're watching live, I'm going to tag him once we're done the feed here in Facebook. But Dustin, any parting thoughts for someone? We've covered a lot of ground in here, but any parting thoughts, or just a line or two for viewers or listeners before we head out?
Yeah, so on the back of my book, I put, inevitably, every single person is going to go through struggles at some point in their life. You're going to find, it's going to make me cry, boy. You're going to find yourself in struggle at some point. And going through them struggles is where you're going to find strength. And that's how I came up with the name of the book. It's not just that I found God. It's not just that I did this. It's that just keep going that my wife always says. And finding that strength in the midst of your struggle. When you come out the other side, you'll realize that when I look back at the person I was 11 months ago, I don't even know that person. I don't even know who he was. And so I've literally changed every single facet of my life because of that or for that. And so that my strength going through that got me to where I am today. And where I am today, next year, I want to be able to not recognize who I am right now. And so my suggestion is, man, no matter what, even though it pisses me off when my wife says it, just keep going.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think that's a beautiful ending. It kind of wraps it up with the back of the book there. Dustin, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you here today, getting to know you, being involved in the book. It's still kind of a pinch me thing, but everybody, you got to reach out to Dustin. And
thanks,
and with
man.
that, we will sign off. Hang around in the here after we go off air. But Dustin,
for sure,
I appreciate you being here, my friend.
For sure, man. Thanks for having me.